Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. So today, I want to look at the state of the comic industry at the end of 2020. And I know it's not quite the end of 2020, but I think I have enough information to do that right now. And so I'm going to do a numbers video, which I haven't done in a while. And a lot of you may be asking, how can you do a numbers video when we don't have numbers coming out for comic sales? Well, I'll get to that. But first of all, I just want to say, for those people who don't typically read comics and are not into the comic industry, the reason why I concentrate so much on the comic industry, in part, is because it is a very good microcosm of a producer of science fiction and fantasy. And so if you consume any science fiction or fantasy product, whether that be television or movies, or you play D&D, or you play video games based upon science fiction and fantasy, or you read novels in this vein, any of that stuff, this picture that I'm going to give of the comic industry, while it may not be shocking to some people who follow the comic industry, I think will be shocking to the people who consume other kinds of fantasy media. That this is an example, I would say a very good example, because we have a lot of good information on this microcosm, as an example of what is going to happen to these other industries as well, or what is actually happening right now. And to answer a question that I get quite often, why do I talk so much about this failing industry? Why don't I just stop talking about it? Well, I would say that this failing industry does impact what I wish to do in the future. Because right now I am producing a graphic novel, and I don't intend this to be my last graphic novel. I am hoping to make this into a business. I am hoping that this will be a side business. Yes, I understand that, but it will be a business that I can engage in, and I will be part of this industry in some small way. And so the big players and what they do greatly affects what I have planned for the future. So that being said, before I go into the dismal state of the comic industry at the end of 2020, I want to give you what I am doing right now as part of this industry to break into this industry in some small way. Because, as I said, I have my graphic novel called Thomas Valiant. The Indiegogo pre-launch page for this graphic novel is already up. The link is in the description, and if you go there and leave your email address, you will be informed when the project goes live. And if you later go on to order the book, you will also receive a free pinup poster, which is exclusive to those people who sign up through the pre-launch page. You will receive this exclusive pinup poster with your book. And here's the thing. I am, at heart, a comic collector, not just a lover of heroes and a lover of story, but I am a comic collector. And the thing is that, well, since I'm going over numbers, a lot of people have said to me, a good number of people to sign up at the pre-launch page for a first-time comic producer, a first-time graphic novel producer, is around 300. Now, at this point, I've already gotten more than 300 signatures. I'm pushing about 400 signatures right now. But at the same time, if you look at Indiegogo's numbers, they say that typically only about 5 to 20% of the people who sign up actually buy your product in the end. So if we take those numbers and we look at, let's push it to about 25%. That's only about 100 people that will receive this pinup poster. And even if every last one of them were to get this pinup poster by ordering the book, that's only 400 people that would receive this pinup poster. So what does this limited edition pinup poster become? Because it's very limited edition if only somewhere between 100 and 400 people are actually going to get this. Well, that makes it a collector's item. And I want to make it a collector's item for the following reason. This is my opening salvo into this industry. And I know from the numbers that I will not receive back the money I'm actually putting out on this poster. Because I've crunched the numbers and I won't receive back my money. I'm actually losing money in doing this. And some would say, well, that's bad business. But I would say no, because again, this is my opening salvo into this industry. And I am doing this because I respect you as a customer so much that I, as my opening entry into this industry, am going to lose money so that you receive the best product possible. Now, that's just for the pinup poster. Hopefully, with the book itself, I will be making money, because I will take that money and then put it into future projects to give you more and better products there as well. But the reason I'm willing to lose money on that opening pinup poster is because I respect you. I respect your labor. I respect capitalism, which says that you take yourself, your time, and you put it into labor, and you produce something which then gives you money. And you want to take some of that money and give it to me for something that I have created? That is humbling. And I wish to show my respect, my honor to you and your decision to do so on my part. Now, yes, I know I said I was going to talk about the comic industry, but I just want you to keep that in mind as what I am doing for my customers as I discuss the state of the main two players within the comic industry at the end of 2020. So, what I wish to do to look at numbers is I'm going to look at a book which is supposed to be very important for Marvel and look at those numbers and extrapolate from the old numbers where this comic is right now and what it means for the health of the industry. Now, this book that I'm going to look at is The Magnificent Miss Marvel. It is the character Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. Now, why am I looking specifically at this book? Well, just briefly, the reason is as follows. I would say that many of you already understand that Marvel Comics is trying to make Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, the flagship character of Marvel Comics. And there is ample evidence to show this. But I believe that I also have ample evidence to make the following claim. And my claim is that Captain Marvel is only a transition character. The real character that Marvel Comics wishes to put as the figurehead, as the flagship character of the entire comic line is Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. Now, I'm going to go over some of the reasons why I make this claim, and to show you why it is certainly plausible, and in my estimation, what is actually going on. So, number one, first of all, if you look at the logo, the symbol for Miss Marvel, it is the old symbol worn by Carol Danvers, Miss Marvel, which is a lightning bolt, which just has 3 lines. This has become the symbol of Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan. Now, many people may not be aware, but in the recesses of Marvel Comics, Marvel Entertainment, this logo is slowly becoming the de facto logo for Marvel itself. If you look at smaller things like their podcasts, many of them use this logo to symbolize Marvel. If you look at, let's say, the Women of Marvel podcast, they have only one symbol up on the screen behind the name of Marvel to show you while they are talking, and that is the symbol of Kamala Khan. And it's the same for other podcasts as well. Podcasts like Marvel's Week in Review. Again, although they have many motifs going through their little image that they put up on the screen, by far the biggest and most prominent symbol within the entire still that they give you is Kamala Khan's lightning bolt. And this is happening not just within the recesses of these other kinds of mediums for Marvel Comics. It is also happening in the comics as well. I'll give you one example. The last run of Spider-Gwen, which they now call Ghost Spider, she doesn't have a symbiote costume. She really does. And this costume has gone through some non-symbiote changes in the story itself, which at the end has left it with the Kamala Khan lightning bolt symbol right across the center. So this is happening all over Marvel. And that's just number one. Of course, we all know that Kamala Khan has now been made the head of the Champions. And the Champions is a book which has been canceled multiple times, but they keep bringing back. And she has been made the leader of this team. Not only that, but you also have the recent Marvel event of Outlawed, which is centered completely around Kamala Khan. It is centered around what is known as Kamala's Law. In addition to that, you have the Marvel Rising Initiative, and I've talked about this a number of times. I call it an initiative because it includes comic books, it includes shorts on the internet, it includes movies on Disney+, it includes various kinds of merchandise, and this is not just merchandise put out by Marvel or Disney, this is actual merchandise that they are licensing to other companies as well. And when the creator of Kamala Khan, who is Sana Amanat, and the director of family entertainment and cartoons for Walt Disney, actually got up and started to talk about this new movie that was coming out, which is Marvel Rising, and everything revolves around this movie, they specifically said that the entire thing revolves around Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, to the extent that every other character, and there's a number of other characters within this initiative, every other character was specifically chosen to reflect the journey of Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. We also have the fact that Marvel is now, right at this point, coming out with tween books that are basically the diary of a wimpy kid, but for young Avengers. And guess who is the center of that book series? Well, it's Kamala Khan. Now, they also have Miles Morales and Squirrel Girl, but Kamala Khan is the head. This comes, by the way, on the heels of what they did last year, which was putting Kamala Khan into things like plays, which they would then sell to high schools. Okay, so it's already through and through with the book industry that they are connected to as well. In addition to that, we also have the Marvel Avengers game that came out recently and flopped. And I'm sure many of you already know that they made Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, the central figure of that game, when she really has nothing to do with the Avengers, certainly not to the extent of the other characters within the video game. And of course, a lot of you also may know that this big push for this character is leading up to the fact that they are creating a television series for Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, on Disney+, which is then going to segue her directly into the movies. And so, I would say, you take all of that, and even more, by the way, and you apply it to the fact that it is for a character that cannot keep her own book in print, a character that really very few people want to actually read about, and you have Marvel pushing so hard for this character. This is evidence of the other things that I pointed to, evidence that supports the statement that others at Marvel have made that they want to take Kamala Khan and turn her into the actual flagship character of Marvel Comics. Now, when I say something like that, a lot of people usually say, well, how do you know that it's not a popular character? And then they go off on a tangent about how they think that this character is so popular and how I have no idea what I'm talking about. Well, let's look at the numbers. And that's really all we have to do. So, looking at the numbers, if we look at the first volume of Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, which started in 2014, we will see how this comic sharply declined and then was canceled. Now, the other thing that I want to point out with these numbers is something I did an entire video about a year and a half ago. It was the fact that if you look at the cancellation numbers of comics for Marvel, you will see that they have a general cancellation number, a number whereby if a comic goes below that number for shipping and for sales, then they simply cancel it. And as time went on, and I continued to do those videos, you can see that that number continued to get smaller and smaller and smaller, so that their cancellation threshold became less and less. So again, let's go back to Miss Marvel. From its 2004 series, it's volume 1. I'll give you the shipping numbers. Again, they're not the sales numbers. They're the shipping numbers of the comics that went out to the comic stores, not the actual comics that were sold to customers. I will give you the numbers for number 1 and then the numbers for number 3, because really, after all the overshipping and the multiple covers with number 1s, number 3 is probably the best guess at what the actual number of customers for number 1 was. And then I'll give you the cancellation numbers, which is the last issue. So for volume 1, number 1 of Miss Marvel was around 50,200. That's how it started off as number 1. But by issue 3, it was down to 37,000. So that's a large drop. And again, I would say that the number 3 numbers are the actual numbers for number 1 if you take away all of the multiple covers and the overshipping of number 1s. So that volume lasted 19 issues. And by the time it was at 19 issues, it was at 31,000 issues shipped. Now, during its run, it actually fell below the 30,000 mark. And I would say at that time, the 30,000 mark was your cancellation number. If we look at volume 2, which started in 2015, the shipping numbers for number 1 were about 80,000. But if you go down to number 3, the shipping numbers drop to 32,000 once again. That is almost to the point at where it was canceled within the previous volume. Now, this volume of Miss Marvel lasted 38 issues. And by the time they got to 38 issues, it was down to slightly above 12,000 before they decided to cancel it. Again, you'll notice that the cancellation number has substantially dropped from somewhere around 30,000 to 12,000. So if you're a major international company, a world dominator in the entertainment system, and you can't sell a character that you wish to make the flagship character any more than 12,000 issues, again, that's just shipping numbers. If you can't do that, this is a pathetic number for any character within the Marvel Disney system. Now, if we go forward to Volume 3, which started in 2019, its number 1 issue only shipped 27,700 issues. Again, That's a number that is lower for its number 1, again, with all of its multiple covers and all of its overshipping, that is lower than the cancellation number for Volume 1. For number 3 of Volume 3, it dips down to 18,000 issues. And for number 4, it dips down to 16,000 issues. So by number 4, again, they are already hitting the cancellation numbers for Volume 2. And the last numbers that we have for Ms. Marvel, which was the end of last year and early this year, they were hovering once again around the 12,000 mark. Again, that is a number which is at the cancellation number of its last volume, Volume 2. Now, they have released a ballpark figure for what the numbers were in September of this year, a couple of months ago. And they say that Ms. Marvel sold somewhere between 11,000 and 13,000. Now, again, extrapolating from the other numbers that I have, I would say that it was probably in the high 12,000s at that point when number 14 came out. So the question is, why am I going over all of this? Well, it's because Ms. Marvel has been canceled. They've already announced its cancellation with number 18. The only reason why they're continuing on to number 18 is because it makes it a legacy number of 75 for this character. That's the only reason. So they've already dipped below the previous cancellation numbers. And I would say, looking at the numbers and extrapolating once again, the numbers for this Ms. Marvel comic, by the time it is canceled, will be below 10,000 units shipped. Again, that's not comics sold, that's just shipped to the comic store. And once again, even after that, even dipping below 10,000 units shipped and being canceled for the third time, C.B. Cebulski made a statement saying that more news to come about the return of Ms. Marvel in 2021. So they already plan to reboot this character once again. Now, to cap this all off, I want to give you a statement from Saladin Ahmed, who is the current writer for Ms. Marvel. And he perfectly sums up the reason why they continue to push this character and will continue to reboot this character even though nobody's reading the comic, and I would say, again, supports the idea that they wish to make this character the flagship character for Marvel Comics. This is what he says when he's talking about the fact that this book is going to be canceled. He says, "Forget superheroes. Kamala Khan is just plain one of the most important fictional characters of her generation." And he continues by saying, "I knew that was true even before I came to write comics." And of course, if you listen to their podcasts and their statements, which I do, the reason why they think this character is so important is because of her ideological bent, is because what she means to the progressive movement. This is why they need to champion this character, and no other reason. Certainly not because this character is popular. So what does all this mean for the state of the comic industry at the end of 2020? Well, let me bring in just one more set of circumstances for you before we get there. That set of circumstances is, again, I used to do videos about every 6 months about what Marvel was putting up on their Twitter page, because Marvel uses Twitter almost as much, if not more, than their normal site itself to sell what they wish to sell. Now, about 2 years ago, when you went to their Twitter site, only about 10% of their tweets was actually about comics. Now, it is a Marvel Entertainment site, but I would say that the core of the Marvel Entertainment, as opposed to Marvel Studios, which makes the movies and the shows, the core of that is the comics, whether the people running it like it or not. And only 10% of their tweets were actually about comics. The other tweets would concentrate on a lot of things which they used to have going. Not only podcasts, but regular shorts that they had on the internet, things about cosplay, and they had a healthy dose of what was going on with the movies and the television and the games that Marvel is producing as well, even though they are not the ones producing those products. Those products would be produced by Marvel Studios. But I did another video about a year after that, and you saw a great reduction in those internet shorts. Now, they were still there, but they weren't pushing them as hard. Again, internet shorts about things like fashion in Marvel Comics, or cooking shows that was based upon food that was given the names of Marvel characters. This was the ridiculous things that were going on about 2 years ago. About a year ago, a lot of that had stopped, or at the very least been pushed to the side. The comic element of their Twitter site had about 30% content with comics. Again, there was still a healthy dose of those internet shorts, but the majority of the tweets were for the television and the movies and the video games. Now, if you skip forward to today and you look at their Twitter site, Again, there is an increase in their concentration on comics. I would say somewhere about 40% perhaps. And a lot of those internet shorts and things, they have completely disappeared. And what they are concentrating on, again, is the television, the movies, and the video games. So you can see that they were trying to do something and it didn't work. And they would always fall back upon the big money makers. And that's where they would support Marvel Comics from. But the problem is, with the last 6 to 8 months, what have we seen? Well, we've seen things like Disney losing $5 billion, that's billion with a B, $5 billion because it had to close its theme parks. So it no longer has money just to throw around. And in addition to that, with the closure of basically Hollywood and the majority of movie theaters, they're simply not going to have those movies to fall back upon. They're talking about right now taking Wonder Woman, which cost hundreds of millions of dollars to make. They're going to take that, just release it for maybe a couple of weeks in the theaters, and then stick it onto, I think it's HBO. So stick it onto television. No one is going to be producing these kinds of movies, these superhero movies that cost that much money in the near future, because they simply cannot risk losing that much money. And on top of that, if you look at the numbers for the Disney Plus television, which was where all of their television shows were supposed to go, if you look at that, it is doing pretty poorly compared to other streaming services. And again, in addition to that, if you look at the newest video game, the Avengers video game, again, that was sporting Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, as its figurehead of the story, estimations are that that game lost $48 million. So all of these things that were propping up Marvel Comics have begun, slowly but surely, to recede into a position where they are struggling themselves to stay afloat. And they certainly can't take extra money that they have and throw it at Marvel Comics so Marvel Comics can stay alive. But if you remember, I started this video talking about my own graphic novel and how I wish to respect my customers. Well, keep that in mind as well while I give you the following information. So, a couple of weeks ago, I had someone who is part of my audience give me a little bit of information about Marvel Comics. And although I'm not Ethan, who has connections to the comic industry, or Richard from Comics Matter, who it seems has his ear against the wall at every company, although I'm not either of them, I do have some contacts within mainstream Big Two comics that I can hit up for information. And without giving away too much information, because I don't want to cause harm to anybody who is giving me information, and so basically I asked the following question to my source. I said, with all that is going on, all that I've just described, with Marvel Comics being in such desperate straits, do you think that Marvel and DC are going to now have to embrace all customers who wish to buy their books? That is to say, also embrace people like Comicsgate who actually wish to buy their comics. And this person, who, again, works directly with the Big Two, said, absolutely not. And that absolutely not that I got was predicated, to some extent, on the fact that this is simply ideological. Or in other words, that they will not go after customers who disagree with what they believe ideologically. And again, that may not be a big shock to you people who are part of Comicsgate, but for you people who are just listening to me and are interested in other kinds of science fiction and fantasy, and thinking that get woke, go broke means the fact that these companies are going to lose so much money that they are eventually going to have to come back and listen to all its customers and give them what they want before they actually go bust, if that's your estimation, I'm sorry to say that that estimation is wrong. These companies that produce this kind of material, that produce science fiction and fantasy entertainment, they would rather see their industries die than actually accept you and I as a customer once again. Now, as I indicated, this discussion that I had was predicated partly on the idea that this is ideological. And I would say there is an ideological slant to this as well. And the ideological slant to this is the fact that progressives believe in such a fervent way that their utopia that is at the end of the progressive rainbow is not just something that can happen, is not just something that they can bring about through hard work. It is something that they believe in a fervent religious way will happen. absolutely will happen. It is the end of history. This is why they use terms like you are on the wrong side of history, because history will show that this utopia will happen, absolutely, and they will be justified. Therefore, I'm sure they still have in their minds somewhere the idea that A, they're doing right, and B, they're going to pull out of this because they're on the right side of history. That's the thing that keeps them moving along, while at the same time, another part of their brain completely understands and accepts the fact that they will not just allow their ship to sink, but they will scuttle their own ship. They will sink their own ship with all hands aboard before they will accept the money of someone who doesn't agree with their ideology. So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like. Hit the shield in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this. And don't forget, the link is in the description for the pre-launch page for my coming graphic novel titled Thomas Valiant. If you leave your email address on the pre-launch page, you will be informed when the project goes live, and it will make you eligible to receive the free, exclusive pin-up poster that you will get if you later decide to order the book. Alright, I'll see you later. Bye.